Happy Wednesday. Mrs. O'Brien reporting for class, and I'm in my front yard. That's my house back there. That's like a little escape pod that we have in the back over there that's currently filled with multicolored plastic balls, like in a ball pit. So that's where the boy goes to play in his ball pit. Don't ask. Anyways, today I am going to be reading with you the article entitled Soaring on the Wings of Wind by Lois Minor Huey. It begins. On June 24th, 1784, Edward Warren Jr. made history as the first American to go up in a hot air balloon. He was 13 years old. Peter Kames, a Maryland innkeeper and lawyer, Maryland is a state just south of New Jersey, placed a small iron stove in a balloon basket one fine June day in Bladensburg, Maryland. He then set fire to the straw and wool inside the stove. Why though? Wouldn't you at some point think maybe I should not be doing this? Smoky hot air swelled the balloon and sent it up. Like in the location where you would blow into a balloon and then tie it up. That's where the fire was. And he had done it. He was the first American to develop a method to lift a balloon using hot air. Kames decided to try it again 10 days later in nearby Baltimore. A huge crowd gathered as he launched a tethered balloon. Tethered means like it's tied down, it's secured. It was 35 feet wide, 30 feet tall. 30 feet tall. Like standing, I'm like a little over 5.5 feet, right? So 5, 10, 6 of me standing on top of each other. 30 feet tall. 200 feet into the air. And the crowd yelled and clapped as Kames sent the balloon up time and again, meaning he succeeded over and over and over again. And by later in the afternoon, the people shouted to send a person into the air. You gonna volunteer for that? The next heading is entitled "The Boy Flies." So apparently, we are. Kames weighed more than 200 pounds. Too heavy for the balloon. He wasn't sure what to do. Luckily, 13-year-old Edward Warren Jr. stepped forward and exclaimed that he'd go. Would that be you? I'll go. I'll do it. No. Edward's parents nodded in approval. Sure, boy. You go on, go. You go into that balloon that's going to be sent up into the air. That's going to be lit on fire. They believed the balloon was safe because it was tethered to the ground with ropes. That rope will keep you safe. The crowd roared as Kames helped Edward climb into the basket. And while Kames stirred the fire in the stove, meaning like he got it all even hotter and hotter, Edward stood holding the ropes, staring up into the huge balloon over his head. He probably wondered if the balloon would indeed be safe. I would be. Like, yo, you sure, Mom? You sure, Dad? You sure, guys? You really? You pretty good? Hot air from the stove burst upward, and the balloon slowly rose. Newspaper reporters in Baltimore described Edward as having the courage of an old voyager, like a guy who's sailing a ship out in the ocean who's not really afraid of anything. And the onlookers screamed themselves hoarse, like they were like, ah, so long that they were like, ah. Edward stared down at the top of the city. Like he's up above, he's looking down at the city below. It's people growing smaller and smaller. And out at the bay in the distance, the bay, like that body of water out there, he was the first American to see such views. You think he was like, yeah, this is great, I'm the first American? Or do you think he was like, oh, this is great, could you put me down, please? Edward smiled and tore off his hat and waved it. All right. And the crowd yelled louder, and men waved their hats in return. Carnes left Edward 200 feet in the air for several minutes before pulling him down. With shaky legs, Edward climbed from the basket. The audience cheered and clapped and collected money for the boy, a reward for his bravery. By flying on the wings of the wind, Edward Warren Jr. had played a big part in the history of flight. Ballooning was soon popular at fairs and festivals. During the Civil War, both sides used them for spying. About 100 years after Cammy's experiment, gasoline engines in airplanes replaced hot air and wind, and people soared even higher. Like it was the beginning of maybe the airplane. The next heading begins early ballooning in France. France. Less than a year before Cammy's lifted his balloon in Bladensburg, French investors, people who will pay money, and brothers Joseph and Etienne Montgolfier sent a sheep, like the kind of sheep, the rooster, and duck into the air. So they chose to send a bunch of animals up into the hot air balloon. The animals rode in an untethered, meaning not tied down, as it says there. The author was thinking that we wouldn't know what untethered meant. So they went and put in parentheses, not tied down, to explain it to us. Anyways, the animals rode in an untethered hot air balloon for 2 miles, then landed safely. That's nice. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. American Representative John Jay, who was in France negotiating the end of the Revolutionary War, he proclaimed or said, "Travelers may be here after literally pass from country to country on the wings of the wind." That was my best impression of a French accent. The first humans soon followed, flying in a Montgolfier hot air balloon over Paris.